They called it Harbor Point Estates. Sounded fancy, right? Like waterfront views, sunrise reflections, a sense of belonging. But to the people actually living there, it wasn't a dream. It was a maze of fees, silence, and doors that only opened one way toward the rent office. For most of the tenants, it was just another corporate-owned rental community. Hundreds of nearly identical buildings, all managed by a company called Raventon Properties, one of those massive firms that owns more units than anyone can count. If you've ever lived in one of these places, you know the drill: bright smiles during the tour, fine print after the lease, and a customer service number that never seems to pick up after move-in. But there was one tenant, a woman named Marie Coleman, who wasn't just another signature on their spreadsheet. She was a single mom, a teacher, someone who'd spent her whole life trying to stay just a step ahead of bills and bureaucracy. And by the time she realized what Raventon Properties was doing, it was already personal. It started with a renewal notice. Her rent, which was supposed to go up by maybe $50, had jumped by $300. No explanation, no warning, just a new number in bold. And it wasn't just rent. There was a smart home convenience fee, a community maintenance charge, a pet technology access fee. Yeah, apparently her cat needed Wi-Fi now. When she called to ask why, the leasing agent told her the price was set by the system. And that's when Marie asked the question that started everything. What system? Turns out the system was an algorithm, a software called Leasematic that promised to optimize rent yield across markets. Sounds like something from a sci-fi flick, but it was real. Big landlords across the country were quietly using similar programs. These systems collected rental data from multiple properties, including what people were willing to pay, and then suggested the maximum profitable rent for every unit. Essentially, if you paid it, someone else should too, maybe even more. And just like that, rents went up everywhere at once. Marie started digging. She wasn't a tech expert, but she was stubborn. She spent nights on Reddit threads, tenant rights blogs, and news articles connecting the dots. Different names, same pattern. Algorithmic rent fixing. She started printing everything. By the end of the week, she had a binder thick enough to be its own lease. Marie wasn't alone. Her next-door neighbor, Louise, worked nights at a hospital and had been hit with the same rent spike. Then there was Rochelle, downstairs retired, living on disability. They all thought it was just bad luck until Marie showed them the binder. She set up a meeting in the laundry room one Sunday afternoon. 5 tenants showed up, then 12, then 20. Someone brought coffee. Someone else brought a laptop. They went over lease after lease, all identical language, all the same market adjustment clause. That's when the anger turned into something sharper focus. Just when they thought they had the full picture, another thread unraveled. The Homeowners Association, the HOA that supposedly maintained the property, was charging the tenants for community improvements. Only problem? Those improvements didn't exist. A security gate that never worked. A green space that was literally a patch of mud. A resident wellness center that turned out to be a locked storage room. The HOA, it turned out, wasn't independent at all. It was run by a subsidiary of Raventon Properties. In other words, they were charging tenants extra fees through a shell company they also owned. When Marie called them out, she got a letter warning that she was violating lease decorum by spreading misinformation. That's when she knew she'd hit a nerve. Most people would have backed off there, but Marie didn't. She filed a complaint with the County Housing Board, attached every document, every fee breakdown, every screenshot of that algorithm's rent history. She wasn't expecting much. Most of these cases die in bureaucracy, but within weeks, something weird happened. Other tenants from different Raventon properties started reaching out. They'd seen her Reddit post. They'd been hit by the same fees. By the end of the month, she had 60 emails from tenants across 3 states. All same company, all same algorithm. You ever notice how the system always finds new ways to blame you? Like, you're late on rent, even though they changed the payment portal without warning. You agreed to the increase because you clicked accept on a renewal you couldn't even open on your phone. That's the modern corporate housing game. It's built on exhaustion. They don't need to scare you into silence. They just need to wear you down until you stop fighting. But Marie didn't stop. She reached out to a tenants' rights lawyer named Caleb Jensen, small-time attorney, big-time attitude. He'd been watching similar lawsuits pop up across the country, claims that big landlords were using software to coordinate rent prices, which, by the way, is illegal collusion if proven true. Caleb saw the potential in Marie's evidence. Within weeks, he'd filed a class action lawsuit against Raventon Properties and Leasematic Incorporated, citing predatory pricing, deceptive fees, and unlawful rent manipulation. And that's when the story changed. Because now, it wasn't just a teacher in Maryland. It was tenants from Denver, Atlanta, Austin, all realizing they'd been fighting the same ghost in the machine. Raventon came out swinging. Their lawyers said the algorithm was industry standard. They claimed market forces dictated the rent, not any collusion or manipulation. But the discovery phase started to crack that facade wide open. Internal emails showed property managers comparing AI rent targets to each other's rates. Executives joked about letting the software do the dirty work. And one chilling line from a memo: "Tenants don't negotiate with code." That line would end up front and center in court. And here's the thing. That line, "Tenants don't negotiate with code," that's not just corporate arrogance. That's the future they want. A world where you can't argue, can't reason, can't even talk to whoever's raising your rent. Because it's automated. Because it's just the system. That's the real horror here. Not monsters. Not ghosts. Just code. Silent, efficient, profitable. The case dragged for a year. Marie faced retaliation, surprise inspections, noise complaints that didn't exist, even a notice to vacate that mysteriously disappeared once her lawyer called. But she wasn't alone anymore. By then, dozens of tenants had joined the suit. A few journalists started sniffing around, and once the story hit local news, the dominoes started to fall. The county attorney's office opened an investigation. The HOA's books were subpoenaed, and a whistleblower, an ex-Leasematic employee, came forward with an internal training manual that described how to limit supply through coordinated pricing recommendations. It was game over. When the judgment came down, it was quiet. No cheering, no dramatic courtroom gasp. Just a PDF file uploaded at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. The court found that Raventon Properties and Leasematic Incorporated had violated state antitrust and consumer protection laws. They were ordered to pay restitution, reduce or remove certain fees, and disclose algorithmic pricing practices going forward. Marie's share wasn't huge. A few $1,000s in restitution. But that wasn't the point. She had cracked open the code. After the verdict, more suits followed. Regulators in other states launched investigations. Some property firms quietly stopped using Leasematic. The company's stock fell, and within a year, it rebranded under a new name, Classic Move. But the story didn't fade. Tenants started organizing online, sharing copies of their leases, comparing fees, finding patterns. Marie even helped found a local group called the Harbor Collective, which educated renters about algorithmic pricing and hidden HOA ties. She didn't become rich, but she became something better. Heard. You know what I love about this part? They thought they could silence her with paperwork. They thought they could drown her in bureaucracy. But you can't outcode human persistence. You can't write an algorithm for conscience. And for once, the little guy didn't just win a case. She changed the conversation. Harbor Point Estates still exists. Raventon Properties still manages thousands of units. But tenants now read the fine print. They ask questions. They talk. And somewhere, deep in a corporate boardroom, someone's rewriting their pricing model. Not because they want to, but because someone like Marie made them. That's the kind of quiet victory that matters. The kind that ripples. The kind that reminds us that the system only works as long as we don't look behind the curtain. So next time you get a rent increase that doesn't make sense, don't shrug it off. Ask. Dig. Because sometimes the fight isn't about money. It's about principle. And every system, no matter how complex, still answers to the people who refuse to be silent. If this story hit home, hit subscribe. Because the system's got plenty of shadows and I plan on dragging a few more into the light.